All right, good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. Wait just a couple seconds for people to come from the waiting room to join us here. Thanks everybody for jumping on. We've got one more minute before we get started here, so just allow people to get in and we'll get started here in a second. All right, so the time is 12:30 p.m. Central, so it's good to see everybody. We'll go ahead and get started here. My name is Robert. I'm Chief Revenue Officer for BW&CO, and today we are presenting on the SBIR program that's been recently reauthorized. And so I want to give plenty of time to our speakers today, who joining us is going to be Christian Mueller, who's our Chief Grants Officer here at BW&CO, and then our Project Manager, Rachel Crawford, who also will be working with us here today. And so at a high level, we're going to look at the reauthorization, what that means, and what you guys should look to do next now that everything is in full swing, as well as some of these agencies that are starting to ramp up. Just a few ground rules. Chat is disabled. However, if you have a question throughout the presentation, you can submit it through the Q&A function at the lower taskbar. And if you guys want more information, I'll put some information into the chat for all of you guys to see about our website, where you can find some more information, as well as booking a call and services information. But just note, at the very end of this, you will get a copy of the recording, the copy of the slides, and all the materials that we went over here today for you guys to review. So if you have any questions, feel free to put it in Q&A. Otherwise, sit back and enjoy, and I'll hand it over to Christian to get started.
All right, thank you, Robert. Yeah, welcome everybody. Let's get started. We have lots to get through. We'll start with number one here. If this session is for you, if you're a for-profit, 51% owned or controlled by a U.S. person or persons, or otherwise qualifying entities or businesses, and you conduct most of your business in the United States, and you're less than still 500 employees, which I think are probably most everybody on this call, then you're right on the money in terms of being able to apply for the SBIR program. There are some exceptions. If you have, for example, if you're majority owned by multiple VC funds, provided that none of them control, not a single one controls the entire company. That's the case for NIH, DOE, DOW. Then you still apply or would qualify, that is. And if you're a foreign company and your work is conducted, or some of your work is conducted outside the US, there's still some exceptions there. Mostly, though, under the SBIR program, it's for subs and consultants. So that still applies. If your company is from outside the United States, you still qualify though for lots of BAA, so federal grants, still federal grants, just not the SBIR program. So if that is you, come talk to us. We'll find you a grant that will fit your conditions there, your situation. This SBIR program is really for any technology stage, any domain. It really encompasses a lot of different programs and technologies. And of course, companies exploring non-dilutive funding, that's key. That's probably why you're here. It's to keep your equity. So you don't have to give that up to venture capitalists. Although we'll talk about venture capitalism. That's not a bad thing. That's part of your strategy, or at least should be part of your strategy in my eyes. But we'll talk about that. So just in a nutshell then, we're talking about phase 1s, 2s, and 3s, how they work in practice, when the SBIRs fit and don't fit your roadmap. What's next for the SBIR program? That's Rachel will take over from there, talking about the reauthorization and what that means going forward. And also, and most importantly, perhaps, is to position your proposals and your technology to increase your P and your percent chance of winning the grant in the first place. I think that's a lot of times overlooked. It's very important. The innovation ecosystem, how does it all fit together? As mentioned, it complements private capital. It's not a replacement for it. The program funds work that is technically risky, so you can de-risk your technology. A lot of times it's too early for venture capitalists. They just don't have the appetite for so much risk. And so the SBIR program is fantastic for that. Uh, and it's also, if you have technology, it's mission critical to agencies. So some of the agencies actually want your technology. They're clamoring for small businesses to, to see what kind of fantastic technologies are coming out of them. In particular, the Department of Defense or Department of War, as well as NASA. They'll all need your technologies. All of them, however, want you to have a dual case in the sense that it's not only good for the technologies of that the agencies might want from you, but also you can commercialize it yourself. So this SBIR program is a dual program where the emphasis is on making sure that you can commercialize with some of these fundings that you're getting. So you take basically your idea to a prototype stage, clinical trials, testing it, and then commercialization. It's the whole enchilada. These are the different agencies. Currently, I think there's still 11 agencies that participate. Department of Homeland Security, Department of Commerce, NIST falls under this one with the CHIPS Act. Then Education, the Tree of Education here, Department of Defense, the Department of War down here, Health and Human Services, the NIH falls under that one. Department of Energy, National Science Foundation, and NASA. So those are the different agencies that participate. What's the difference? So we have the SBIR. It's really the SBIR and STTR program. STTR stands for Transfer Program, Small Business Innovation Research Transfer. So the SBIR is the small business where the small business leads the R&D for the most part. There are research partners or optionals. For the STTR, you have a formal collaboration with a nonprofit, usually, so it's a small business and usually a research institution, what they call RI, and is usually a university, but not always. And the R&D effort there is shared, as well as your IP, intellectual property. So there's contracts that we can give you that are standard to sort of figure out who owns what. You bring your background intellectual property, but then you develop technology together. And the PI could come from either the research institution or the small business. That's the general difference between the STTRs. You use STTRs for deep academic IP. So if it comes from the university, if it originates from the university, of course, you want to have those individuals, those professors on board. Sometimes you have faculty-led commercialization. Faculty is actually looking to commercialize, and so they need small companies to help them out. That's another path. Or federal agencies that focus more on academic rigor. So NSF, for example, is very heavy because it's early TRL levels, research heavy. And so, of course, it's the NIH because of the medical research that happens there. And again, as mentioned, it requires coordination and IP rights agreements between the two. The structures, you have 3+ phases, more or less. You have a phase 1, which is sort of the feasibility. The phase 2 is the development and the testing phase. And the phase, which also includes a phase 2B, which is sort of the pre-commercialization. It requires some cost sharing for the most part. An example is at DoD, they have TACFI and STRATFI, tactical funding increase and strategic funding increase. That sort of bridges the gap between the development phase and the commercialization, the phase 3. And I would say, if you remember nothing from this presentation other than this part right here, phase 3, this is your golden nugget, where you can basically take or get a sole source if you've had either a phase 2 or even a phase 1, and you're taking the same technology and you find an end user somewhere within the government. They don't even have to be within the same agency that provided you the phase 1 or the phase 2. You find an end user and they're interested in your technology. Then if it's been done under an SBIR program, you have 20 years that it belongs to you, that nobody else can touch it. Not only that, but they can cut you a sole source. They don't need to talk to anybody else or position it out to solicit to find other potential technology folks that deliver the technology. They can come directly to you and sole source it. So that's the golden part right here. Come talk to us if you want to know more about how to get into phase 3s. Phase one, feasibility and validation. We talked about that. So that test readiness level, usually around 1 to 3. The objective there is to prove the technical idea is viable. Is limited scope. The military starts at 75K, for example, under AFWorks to like around 300K, 3 to 9 months, sometimes up to 12 months. And it's to clearly define the technical and research questions. Focuses on risk reduction here. So it's a technical feasibility study, early validation. It's not a full product development nor a revenue generation or scale up at this point. Then phase twos is sort of generally TRL 4 through 6, builds on successful phase one results. So if you have a phase one that you put in, the chances of getting that are lower than a phase two. Once you've had a phase one and it's successful and you did what you said you would do, then getting a phase two is on average about 50% thereabouts. So it's pretty high compared to a phase one. So once you're in, so to speak. You just got to keep it up. There's also direct to phase twos you can hop on, so you don't have to have had a phase one before that. For some programs, you need to have a phase one equivalent. You can talk to us about what that means. These are larger scope, 750K to 2 million plus, about 1 to 3 years. We do your prototype development, pilots, system integration, that kind of testing, a TRL 4 through 6. It's still R&D, no commercialization. Then we have the phase 2Bs. They've always been there. There are some changes now. Rachel will talk about that a little bit. But it's sort of the pre-production stage to cover the, they call it the valley of death. From a development stage, how do you get to the production stage, to commercialization? That's really the hardest part. And so this new reauthorization is trying to help that a little bit along. But they've always been there, these phase 2Bs. It builds on the successful phase two. These are even larger in scope. For the military, for example, 3 million to 15 million. This new one now, there's a 30 million strategic breakthrough allocation. That is, they don't call it a phase 2B, but that's essentially what it is. It's to bridge the gap there. It's up to 4 years. But again, it's so pre-commercialization stages. And then you have the golden nugget, the phase 3. That's where we all want to get to, right? That should be your goal. Those are no longer SBIR grants, but they still fall under the SBIR protection. And as mentioned, they can be sole sourced. They can include government contracts, licensing, commercial sales, you name it. It ranges the gamut in terms of what kind of contracts you might have. SBIR data rights protection, 20 years applies. And the sole source, you don't have to openly compete, which is the fantastic part. Non-dilutive means you have to give up no equity to the government. They don't want your equity, no ownership dilution. So you retain your IP for the most part, unless you're working as an STTR, then you got to share that with the research institution. The downside there, if you can call it that, is funding comes with performance requirements. Of course, it's a contract or a grant, but either way, they still would like to see something out of that. So it's not really a downside. It's more of a performance. You got to give what you have to give in order to get this non-dilutive funding. Then intellectual property. The small business generally owns the IP. The government receives limited rights. It's royalty-free, sometimes unlimited rights, royalty-free worldwide rights to use, but you still have the right to commercialize it and make money out. It's 20 years. And the exact terms differ by the different agencies. Private investment. So the SBIR does not prohibit working with VCs or angel investors. It's alongside. You should have both at the same time if you can, or at least start with the SBIR program, then go over to the SBIR, the venture capitalism side, because they can de-risk your technology, strengthen your fundraising narratives for the VCs when you reach out to them. As mentioned, some agencies have VC ownership thresholds. So then, the strategy in a nutshell, if you're starting out, should not be a one-off grant. It should be a continuous endeavor to fund your high risk or de-risk your technology as you build your technology. Rather than going at it alone, you can use government funding. To retire your largest risks, it's the And sort of an equivalent is the pre-siege stage, is the feasibility slash phase one. If you want to compare the two, the siege stage, would be the building of prototypes and pilots in phase two, and then the Series A, etc., is the transition to commercialization. And that's on your path to phase three, basically. What do they look for? What do the reviewers look for when you're putting in a proposal? In general, the high level, of course, the devil's in the details, and we can help you on that. The technical merit and feasibility has to be there. It needs to be aligned with the agency's mission. So look at the agency's mission. Dual commercial use. It must have use privately so that you can make money and also be useful for the government for the most part, for most agencies. And then look at your team's capability. Do you have an expert for each one of your technology verticals? Very important because you'll have to address that somehow. So you need an expert. Even if they're not working for you, you can outsource those or work with a university, get a professor. And you have to have clear and realistic work plans because they know they're going to look at this and say, okay, this can be done in 2 years or in 6 months or whatever it may be. Then I guess out of that, some of the reasons why even strong technologies fail to achieve grants. As I talked about, misalignment to the agencies is super important. It's part of our strategy, what we do, to position you well, to get you to the right agencies, to the right grants. Your scope is overly ambitious. Again, they'll know, the reviewers will see through this. The technical narrative is insufficiently innovative, and or you're treating your SBIR like a pitch deck. Very important here, underline this. Don't be afraid to disclose your secret sauce, so to speak. I know it's hard for most innovators, most folks that start companies, to speak about that because that's your IP and you want to protect that, and that's true. But that's why you have these 20 years SBIR rights clauses that protect your technology. And if you don't disclose some of the details, the reviewers won't know whether or not you already know what you're talking about or you don't. Or if you don't have an academic team on board. So always try to reach out to universities. And Rachel is going to take it from.
All right, thank you, Christian. So let's talk a little bit about if SBIR is right for your company, overall. So just like Christian kind of talked about at the beginning, you really want to still have a technical risk that you're going to resolve. So you want to be thinking about your feasibility, your development. That still needs to be, a strong portion of what you need to accomplish to advance your technology. And in addition to that, you really want to make sure that your technology aligns with some sort of federal mission, whether it's for NASA or for the NIH. You want to be sure that your goals and what your product is going to accomplish is going to be in line with what these entities also want to accomplish. So again, you want to be able to resolve those technical risks. So you want to be able to execute structured R&D. That's not just product delivery. It's not just the commercialization aspect. That's more phase three, like Chris was saying. This is for actual feasibility and development, that structured R&D. So if you already have a built product, it's not just a sales grant. So it's not a great fit for that. It's also not great if you need immediate cash, from the time of submission of an SBIR to actual funding can take, usually 9 to 12 months to actually see any funding. So if you need immediate cash, it's not really a good fit for you. And again, you want there to be kind of a clear government use case. Your goals, you want them to align with what is good for these entities and what they want to accomplish. So when you're writing an SBIR proposal yourself as a company, there are some cases where this works well and your company, is able to handle this. So, maybe you've won and submitted SBIRs before and you really understand all these agency-specific expectations. And not only that, but you have all of the time to manage actually constructing the proposal itself, which can be quite laborious. So, we usually think of these proposals as kind of three different pieces. The first being strategy. strategy where you're thinking about how does my, work in this R&D that I want to execute, how does it align with what the agencies want to do? How am I going to strategize and show off and develop my tech? And then there's the writing component, which of course is creating all the files that are needed for the actual proposal itself. And then there's the compliance portion, which is going to be things such as actually making sure you're registered for all the different portals that you need to submit an SBIR. There's compliance within the proposal itself. Do you have the right formatting? Do you have all the right forms, all the peripheral forms, etc.? If you're a first-time team submitting, one of the risks of doing it yourself is that we find that first-time teams often underestimate the reviewer expectations and the detail needed in these proposals to really, show the reviewers that you're ready to take on the tasks that you've proposed. So a grant writing partner like our company might make sense for you if this is your first SBIR. Maybe you need help with that strategy, maybe the agency where you're going to apply, maybe the phase is unclear, you're not sure if you want to do phase 1 or phase 2. Maybe you have a really strong technical team, but you need SBIR and maybe you just have time to actually put in the work that it takes to write one of these proposals because, again, it is kind of a laborious process. There's all these different details and nitty-gritty aspects that go into it. So usually, if this is something that's strategic to your roadmap for your company, that expert support usually does pay off. Oh, next. Oh, there we go. So why partner with us? So again, here are kind of those 3 components that I spoke about. The things that we can help with is, first of all, we can help with strategy. So we can assess your tech, we can look at what data you have, or maybe what fits into the different agencies, whether again, all these different entities, the DoD, the NIH, the NSF, and see what is that agency funded before, and then what are they looking for right now. We can also help you engage with program officers to discuss your technology to make sure that the program officer agrees that it's the right fit for their institute or their agency. We can also advise with, looking at your academic collaborators and reaching out to potential end users who can help then support your proposal. Then that second portion, the actual writing of all the different components that go into a proposal, you'll be paired up with one of our excellent human writers. I know that especially in the writing world, AI has really kind of taken it by storm, but you will be working with one of our human writers. And what we do use AI for on our team is compliance checking. So, your proposal itself will be human written, and then we really like to use AI and have developed some really great algorithms to check for certain compliance things that, the human eye is easy to miss, but the AI is really great at looking at. So for example, maybe we have our statistical analysis written out in the proposal, but maybe, the human eye, it's easy to skate over some things. Maybe the math doesn't quite add up, but the AI is great at looking at those things and making sure all the components are there, making sure all the math adds up, etc. So just another set of eyes essentially on the proposal to make sure that we get everything possible to bolster it as much as possible. And then that third point for admin, we help you avoid any formatting errors, any immediate rejections because maybe there's a form you forgot to fill out, or there's some sort of error that caused the portal to reject you. And we can make sure you have all your peripheral docs in place and help you register. So we help to take care of that. So as you all know, there's been some issues and some waiting time with the SBIR reauthorization. So as you likely know, it expired last year in September, and so there were no new awards or solicitations. And that plus then the government shutdown caused kind of this backlog of proposals. And there were fewer awards issued last year than normal. So I will say if you did submit within that last cycle before that September expiration, make sure you're checking your email, see if you're getting any just-in-time requests from the agencies. A lot of them are looking to spend their allocated funds before the fiscal year ends. So make sure you're checking your emails to see if you've gotten any, nudges to submit any more information. But in general, as things are starting up again, don't expect an even start across the agencies. So, you might see something that the DoD says, but that's not applicable for the NSF or the NIH. Things are kind of going at a slightly different pace as everyone catches up. And we should expect, probably some slightly longer timelines as we're waiting for replies or waiting for reviews just as things get back into shape. So as far as the changes that have happened, that are new now that reauthorization has happened, there's a few general changes that we should be aware of across agencies. So first of all, there's going to be a broader, more explicit security review. So essentially, what's happening there is that there's going to be a review for foreign risk assessment around all the different components. So essentially kind of probing the entire ecosystem around the small business, with financial obligations, personnel analysis, investments, etc. So that's something to be aware of. However, the good news about this is that if you are rejected or denied on security grounds, they do have to give you a reason for this. So, hopefully if you're denied, you can get told what that reason is, and then you can end up submitting. And this does not automatically bar you from participation in future cycles. So hopefully that will really help. If there's any sort of issue, you'll be able to know what it is and then pinpoint it for the next time. Additionally, there's an annual proposal cap that we should be aware of. For example, the HHS and everything that falls under it, so that includes the NIH, just limited it to 9 SBIR proposals per year per company, which includes revisions, resubmissions, etc. So it's 9 total. And there is also an exciting new strategic breakthrough phase 2 path. So this is an award that's going to be up to 30 million over 48 months. And those are going to be for those who have at least one prior phase 2 award. So that's very exciting. You need to have matching funds required for that, as well as targeting technologies. Oh, sorry, I cut out there. That are de-risked and positioned for commercial use. So. Okay, and some of the other changes, so there's going to be a stronger phase 3 transition. Christian talked a little bit about this, but essentially there's going to be the kind of this simplified and standardized phase 1 to 2 to 3 procedure, as well as the flexible tab, so you can kind of self-select your tech and business assistance providers. And if you have any I-Corps training access within your proposal, you have to offer SBIR, STTR, offer that participation to the award. So. As far as agency-specific changes, so the NIH is scheduled to list their new SBIR and STTR opportunities in June. But what we've been hearing is that the anticipated first due date is going to be September 5th. And the reason for this is because with the way that the council meetings work, the next possible review anyway is in January. So essentially the NIH has kind of prioritized giving submitters a longer time to work on their proposal, because even if, there were to be an earlier date than September, the first deadline for it to be reviewed is January anyway. So essentially, that feedback wouldn't come any sooner if there was a sooner one, so they've decided to use the September 5th date as the next deadline. There are some updates to forms, including bio sketches. You do have to have the ScienceEV format now. There's also updates to some other forms like your data research strategies, as well as any just-in-time forms. So again, if you receive a just-in-time email, make sure you follow the links in your email because those forms have changed. There's also updated funding, so it's increased a little bit for both phase 1 and phase 2. Again, the HHS has capped proposals for small businesses at 9 per year. And then there's also some highlighted topics to be on the lookout for. These aren't NOFOs, but the agencies are releasing topics of interest just to be on the lookout for in case you are a match for any of those. For the NSF did just indicate that they will resume submission of new project pitches. So that's exciting if you've got a pitch to send out to the NSF. And the DoD has also opened for proposal submission for SBIR and STTR. And there's some pre-release. And there's changes to those anticipated, so make sure to check them frequently. And the direct to phase 2 for the DoD is actually going to include STTRs now, so be aware of that, as well as the strategic breakthrough funding being a new addition, and it's not replacing, this other funding. It's just an addition to. And with that, I think that's all from me, and I think I'll turn it back over to Robert. So thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you guys for the presentation, and I hope you guys were able to soak all that in. If not, you will be getting a copy of the webinar recording and slide decks for you guys to review. And at the highest level, we'll send out an email going over some of these details, but our firm is here to assist with your application, either as a supporting mechanism on an hourly basis or to take over the reins and do the technical and commercialization writing as needed for some of these applications. So send some more details over about that as well. But seeing that we're just at time, I appreciate you guys for joining us here today. You should be getting that email later this afternoon or early tomorrow. So thanks so much for joining us, and best of luck as you continue to seek non-dilutive funding. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Al.